Hello everyone and welcome to the final day of VALORANT Challengers North America Stage 1. Already 5 weeks have passed and we still have a little bit more to figure out who's going to be the top of Group B for those valuable season points, and for our final match, which two teams are going to be locked in and getting relegated to the relegation promotion tournament. There's so much on the line today, and I cannot wait to get started. Of course, though, I'm not going to be doing it alone. I have to bring in my wonderful casters for the day. I have Uber Shouts here, and I have I Hold Shift. Shift, you do a little dancey dance? You just as pumped as I am?
Just as pumped, maybe more so. No, probably just as pumped. I don't want to oversell too much. A little dance, a little shimmy for you, a little shoulder shake. I don't know. It's going to be one of those things, man. We've got a lot on the line for a couple of our teams out to finish off their group stage session.
We really do, Uber. I mean, sometimes when you get to the end of any sort of season, some of the last matches are kind of, consolation matches just for fun. But really, everything's riding on today.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're deciding the top of Group B and also the relegation scenario in that same group. So both of our games have, implications, and they're also both interesting because they feature teams who are right next to each other on that ladder. So not only, of course, do these matches mean something, we expect them to be pretty competitive.
Well, let's pull up our group standings so we know exactly what we're keeping an eye on going in for today. When we're talking about a lot on the line here, we're going to be looking at Group B over on your right-hand side. Whew. Left and rights are a little bit difficult, y'all, I'm not gonna lie. But we're gonna be eyeing up who's gonna be getting that first place spot here between M80 and Turtle Troop. And then we're gonna be looking at a match between the Glazers and Winthrop. And that one, Shift, actually has implications for all of those four bottom teams, including YFP and Thinkyman on the other end.
Yeah, I mean, the group points are one part of the equation, but the relegation situation is not just exclusive towards that. So, yeah, you've got kind of this head-to-head scenario, but with a handful of teams that have only won a single series to this point, yeah, the relegation conversation becomes an extremely interesting one. And even on top of that, just to kind of speak more to, you have the top side of Group B, you also have M80 who haven't dropped a map yet, so they could really do some legwork in terms of really setting themselves up for success as potentially the top overall seed. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line for that second series, and as much as I love to watch M80 play Valorant, I'm actually kind of more looking forward to that one since the drama's going to be super high.
Well, it's interesting because despite Winthrop having an extra win over the Glazers, these teams have an equal round differential. They're both at -35, which kind of speaks actually to the closeness of many of these losses that the Glazers have suffered. Now, I may have given up predicting them, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be still putting their best foot forward today against Winthrop. The round differential doesn't actually matter, though, in this case, because I mean, if the Glazers win, they'll be fifth on head-to-head, basically having beaten Winthrop in general. Remember, that last spot is the one that sends you to relegations in these groups. So that's where you want to stay. You want to stay off the bottom. You want to be fifth or above in either of these groups.
I mean, if you're fans of those teams, we're going to have to make you wait for that one because that is going to be our second series of the day. Instead, I want a little refresher of the season points that we're looking at for our teams and what the stakes are going to be for our very first series. Because, of course, when we're looking at Challengers' entire ecosystem here, the whole point is to make it on to this Ascension Tournament. And it all starts here, Shift. You want to be trying to get the max amount of points. And for M80 and Turtle Troop, even though M80 has a game on Turtle Troop, if Turtle Troop beat them, well, then it goes down to tiebreakers. Turtle Troop gets that first place spot.
Yeah, and that is an important thing to put in mind because you're absolutely right. We talked about this Group B squad, or a set of squads rather. It's just who's going to be the second best overall team in this group, but you're absolutely right. There is an opportunity for Turtle Troop to kind of leapfrog a touch. But no, I think the thing is, no point is a bad point. I mean, shout out G2 from last year. Great opening stage, miserable time in the back half, and then they kind of just fell apart and crumbled. They had a bit of a cushion because of the points that they earned from that first stage. So yeah, there definitely could be an opportunity here to, get yourself a couple of those extra key points to just give yourself a bit of separation and a little bit of breathing space between yourself and whoever else seems to be really tight right below you, which has been the case. We've got our top two teams, everyone else kind of right in the middle of the groupings from top to bottom. So yeah, it's definitely a key week in terms of trying to figure out who's going to finish where and with what points assigned to their names.
And really quickly, as we get onto the mid-season, cup, there are also circuit points up for grabs for that. Yep. But in order to make it there, you need to avoid relegation because the teams that come up through relegation will be competing in that tournament as well.
There is so much going on for today. So, I mean, I feel like everyone has an indication of what the schedule looks like for today because we have not been shy about talking about it. But let's draw the graphic and make it official, right? As well, a little update on how the rest of the week went. It has honestly been such a week of Valorant here. No, it has been crazy. It has been crazy. My predictions are an absolute shambles. So, I don't know. It's Uber. It really is kind of an expect the unexpected type of week over here.
I mean, I just don't get it. It's been a wild week. My Preds are absolutely boom, but at least I'm not the only one. Finally, thinking men reward Wyatt's dedication to prepping them each and every time. This core team, right? I think every time we watch them in the last 3 weeks, we've been really impressed. We're like, this team is really quality. They are very, very good. Beating Oxygen, though, is definitely exceeding our expectations. And that sad TSM game was one that many people had up in the air, but I had TSM to take it. I thought they were really developing. So if this week is anything to go by, expect the unexpected.
It's fun. I love this. It's keeping us on our toes, right? And I feel like the first series definitely will have us on our toes as well. We got to start talking a little bit more about M80 and Turtle Troop and start talking about this M80 squad first. M80, I mean, Shift. Last year in Challengers, we saw them do so well. They could have been that team. So close. And what we've seen in Challengers so far, they're definitely continuing that really strong streak. Undefeated so far.
Yeah, that's the big point for me is the fact that there have been a couple of moments where they've been tested, but they keep finding ways to win, which is something that we said a lot about the Guard last year. And again, you can't compare one year to the next, you know, as a 1-for-1, but I think that those qualities are often kind of overshadowed or overlooked due to the fact that, yeah, at the end of the day, M80 is still undefeated. So we look at the individual numbers and we kind of boast and praise the individuals that have led to a lot of success. But I think the thing about this M80 team compared to the one from last year is their composure and their ability to adapt when it matters most is so much stronger than it was last year. I think for a lot of people who watched over that Ascension Grand Finals, that was the difference maker. We went into that one talking about how the Guard was one of the best mid-round adaptation teams in Challengers all season long, and that's how they beat M80. Now, all of a sudden, it kind of feels like they've taken that in stride, and now they're one of the major kind of contributors towards figuring out where their problem spots are and dealing with it very, very swiftly, not letting games get out of hand.
I will say that they are struggling to close series out. They quite often end up on Lotus in the second map of their series, and it looks questionable. And it's not even like an individual thing, because let's use Nismo for an example. One time they play Lotus, he looks incredible. The next he looks really average, right? They have this beautiful Sunset performance against Winthrop, which is Winthrop's map pick. They're insanely strong there. They dominate them and get onto Lotus, and it's a struggle. They are dragging themselves, kicking and screaming over the finish line. And this team as well is one that goes without a duelist for Icebox, which is kind of like their preferred map right now. We see Nismo switch over towards like a KO quite often, and their Flood retakes are really good on defense. They are so clean. Xander gets to run wild. So this team has some real strength, but Lotus as a map that they're trending towards and trying to pick has been pretty unconvincing for me. So again, I think there's still a bit to prove, and they're not guaranteed to sit at the top of this Group B either.
They're definitely not guaranteed. Nothing, I think, is free when we're looking at this year of Challengers. But I want to start talking about the strengths of this team and actually pull up this tweet from Nismo. Not talking about Nismo, though, or Nismo's performance, though, but instead giving props over to Happy. We don't necessarily talk about the coach diff too much, but Shift, I mean, Happy is someone who has been here putting in the work. Roy has not been shy about talking about him whatsoever. I feel like we need Roy here to really sing Happy's praises for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations that, you know, we talk about the values of a coach. Sometimes it kind of feels like it's, I won't say superficial, it's not the right word, but it's hard to put a finger on what exactly it brings as an outsider looking into the system. So when you start to hear the conversation, you know, being stirred up, whether it's through players or in particular players of the teams talking about their coaches, that's where you start to kind of add other layers towards, you know, maybe at times we kind of look at it from an inference standpoint of like, wow, this is kind of like a cooked up composition that was pretty brilliant, you know, in terms of the team talking with it, and maybe in particular that being led by, you know, the coaches in those certain circumstances. I think in the past as well, you've also kind of seen like our praise for coaches has been off of restructuring teams by their roster, you know, shout out Evil Geniuses kind of for that particular instance. But it is cool to see players giving a shout back to their coaches in a long-standing system, which has been kind of the case for M80, and it definitely goes to show that their composure and maybe their ability to close out series, maybe as tight as it's been, there could be some level of during those timeouts, Happy's bringing a lot to the table that we just don't get a chance to ever hear.
Coaches matter in Valorant. They really matter. The system is set up for them to have impact, and Happy is a literal esports legend and is won some of the highest accolades that you could ever ask for as a player. And his coaching style is really clear. This M80 team, despite what I sort of say about their Lotus, they are very tight. Like, if you don't have really clean protocols and like util execution, they will punish you. They're very good at finding weaknesses in a lot of your setups, like they did to the Glazers, for example, on Icebox. That's like a very good example of a team that's a little scrappy, that can't get their ducks in a row and get smashed by M80.
And when we're looking at that coach difference for the team, that's where we have to start talking about Turtle Troop, because honestly, Turtle Troop, they have been doing great so far, the split in Challengers, but they've lost their coach at the beginning of the split, and unless I'm missing something, Shift, they haven't got a replacement yet. So what Turtle Troop has managed to do with themselves and under direction of IGL, I think has been really, really strong. But I'm curious if we might see a little bit of the, where that coach shift comes in today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, I look at kind of the history of where Turtle Troop has successfully played, and you get a lot of kind of shout outs to Dust. We talk a lot about teams with no coaches sometimes having a struggle in like map fluency. How good and how well versed are they outside of their one stapled pick that they expect to get every single series? And Turtle Troop does fall a little bit victim to that, but not as much as you would assume, compared to other squads that we've seen in the past that, find their way into Challengers, no coach. They just have a good kind of internal system with the 5 of them. It feels like Turtle Troop have really kind of just owned their own identity over the course of these last couple of months, where their growth, their progress, the system is all built around them kind of figuring it out themselves. And sometimes you can find a lot of success in that because you've got 5 creative minds coming to the table rather than maybe just sometimes looking at just one when in terms of a coach. Again, just to kind of paint the picture of opposites in this example. So maybe that is a byproduct here for Turtle Troop, because they have definitely pack-a-punched from what this team was last year.
Yeah, though when we look back at their split, I mean, it definitely hasn't been without its ups and downs, right? And I have to commend them for always being able to bounce back here, Uber. I mean, that is definitely a big thing when we're looking back at, that TSM win. That was definitely something that was great here, but a couple of the one loss series, the win threw up, a couple of the maps dropped. Like, that is where there's a little bit of questions, but again, it's the bounce back.
Yeah, for me, like the victory against TSM was really indicative of how this team has developed, especially their Sunset plays in general. That was a really sick map where, we see them sort of lean heavily on like that double initiator look where you can sort of send them both to the one side and play off them. And Corey, has a great series. We even heard Corey sort of say like, yeah, we don't have a coach right now, and we have a tendency to really get in our own heads. And it's been a problem in the past. We really overthink things. This is a team of veterans. Like, these guys have been around for a long time, either in Challengers or even above that level. So to some degree, I think that they can sort of carry themselves in that regard. But Corey basically said in that post-game interview, he was becoming a bit of a vibes merchant, a la Zelsis for this team, because he felt like they really needed that. As good as they were as individuals, sometimes the morale just really needed a bit more of a boost. So that's a lot to ask for as well from like a duelist on your team, to sort of add that to his responsibilities. But if they can pull it off, I think that this team can really, have a big impact. And if we keep seeing like the progression of their Sunset, maybe they get to go back to Lotus, which I think they've been able to leverage Corey very effectively on. Now they've moved away from the neon looks and are going back to the Raze setups. I think that's where Corey is able to shine, instead of just kind of getting traded and making space at the start of so many of these rounds.
I mean, you're talking about Corey, but there's someone else that I want to be talking about. But first, I want to pull up this tweet. I mean, the tweet is just kind of for a little laugh, but I think is the very indicative of how the last series went. Not the did bad personally part coming out from Adder. Sorry, Adder, I don't want to throw you under the bus there. But the did bad personally, but we didn't. Talking about WeeDid here. First off, I love the constant memes that we have with WeeDid's name. But looking at WeeDid's performance last week in particular, I mean, this shift was definitely someone who was stepping up. And I think that it's when we get WeeDid stepping up is when we see a really big swing in momentum for Turtle Troop's favor.
100%. And that's the thing too, is, Turtle Troop finds themselves in the conversation point of, you never have to look at one particular player to pop off. And seeing WeeDid stats over the course of especially the last couple of weeks, it's been really kind of awesome to see that as a controller, what he's able to provide for his squad, not just individually. I mean, the cast percentage is also really, really high at 76%. It's exactly what you want to see from someone who largely plays the controller role. But his ability to follow up on his own utility, I think in particular, has been great too, because like Uber was saying, we've seen swap aways from them not necessarily really kind of playing off of heavy controller setups. You know, they got rid of the deadlock on Sunset in favor of playing for more initiators. They're looking to play more aggressive and take a little bit more space away. And so once you initially get that execute, you have to be able to hold it. And WeeDid has done perfectly at that. You know, I think other squads of the past, it's been like you trust your Sentinel to lock down one side of the map, but WeeDid's holding every bit of ground that his team is finding with him.
So he's like this combination of really annoying. Like, he is ratty. Like, it is very, very hard to get the drop on WeeDid. He also does some things that are just absolutely audacious.
That's
like, I
true
think back to
too.
the clip, I think I shared it on Twitter actually, of him playing in tree on Lotus. And like, he's got the perfect one-way right as the door swings open. He actually finds a kill there. Then he gets paranoid. The spike carrier runs in at him and he's like, well, I can't see, so I'm just going to spray. And on the run, he rips the head off of the spike carrier while paranoid and just transitions into sort of a normal round from that point on. This guy's always good for one, if not more, which is huge. And again, he's not involved in a lot of those first engagements. He's really not a first kill, first death player. It's not a relevant stat when you look at that for WeeDid.
Yeah.
But his mid rounding and obviously his lurks is just very, very oppressive. This guy is just extremely talented and very, very hard to read.
100%. And he has been such a fun player to watch throughout this. And if he's stepping up, I definitely think that this is one that Turtle Troop can take the distance. And like, again, we have to talk about the stakes of this, re-hit that. This is for first place within this Group B. So Turtle Troop, I want to see them come out strong. For the map picks and bans, we'll have to see how strong they can be coming out of the gate here. Because, of course, M80 here, Shift. They're a team to be reckoned with. And they're going to be kicking it off on Icebox.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations that I think both of the teams have kind of done a little bit of their homework here. Although for M80, they're going to love seeing Icebox in the mix. They play a super fun composition to watch. Again, Uber was kind of talking about some of the styles that they have brought to other maps. Expect to see something similar here. For Troop, interesting that they go into an Ascent. I think that, you know, the one time they did play it back in week 3 versus SAD Esports, it was pretty convincing. They bring a very different look there as well, talking about the deadlock.
Map, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, they are one of the teams that have really tried to embrace the new agent and try to find ways to bring her to the mix as much as humanly possible. Now, of course, Sunset was one of the main elements that we kind of categorized that won't be in this pool, but I still find it peculiar that with what was available, Troop does go to the Ascent and, you know, not trying to find something like the Lotus first. But the good news is they still get it as map potentially number 3. So this is a pretty good series for Troop. It just comes down to, can they keep themselves, you know, with their feet underneath them here at this opening Icebox, which M80 has absolutely dominated so far this stage.
And not lose the momentum on that first map. Because I think if they can make it past Icebox and just keep something together for Ascent and take us into a map 3 in this series. I mean, Uber, you were not shy about talking about Lotus and M80s and these ups and downs. I mean, if we're seeing like M80 and a reformed M80 on Lotus and playing at their peak, well then, you know, Turtle Troop might be kind of donezo. But considering how back and forth this has kind of been, like, I think Turtle Troop, they take it to the map 3, this could be their series.
Yeah, I mean, like, Lotus, it's important to remember that Lotus is a very hard map to play off the side on.
Yeah,
and that's why these retakes always get extremely messy. And the maps end up being really scrappy and they can become very duelist oriented. And we've just seen a couple maps where, like, you know, Nismo has been on form, and then when he's not been able to have that same level of impact. I also fear what WeeDid can kind of do on Lotus. So there's, you know, we've seen Turtle Troop love to, you know, get WeeDid flashing out of door towards C Mount on defense and sort of hitting the attackers as they're trying to set up here. So there's quite a few set plays that Turtle Troop have that can really exploit a team that is kind of taking their time a little bit. They aren't being sort of decisive enough when pushing into these sites. And of course, you know, both of these teams go without duelists on Icebox, or at least Turtle Troop did, which is interesting. Like, you know, you kind of want to see Corey's individual skills kind of leveraged as much as possible here. But it means that, you know, those retake scenarios on Icebox are always quite compelling to see because they're often powered by KO Flash or Gecko getting involved, or in Turtle Troop's case, it's like a Sova to try and read the site before they get in. I think that's a very compelling matchup, but it's been really hard to knock M80's Icebox in general. That's definitely their best map. That's definitely where they want to take their opponents if they can.
I think it's interesting when we look at Icebox, our first map in the series, that both teams kind of have the same approach in the, okay, we're kind of leaving the duelists at home. We're going to go for the double controller, double initiator. But even like in that look here, Shift, I mean, we have the Sova versus the Gecko that M80 pulls out. We also have the KJ for M80 versus the Cypher. So it's interesting because the fundamental is kind of the same, but then how they decide to go about it is completely different if we expect to see the same comp coming out from both sides.
Yeah, and kind of looking at M80 in this Icebox composition, it does also kind of lead towards what they do on Sunset, which is get to the front doors of these sites, let the wingman do the work from there, essentially. And I think on Icebox in particular, the Dizzy can bring a lot of extra value in delaying potential hits, whether that's from the defensive side perspective or offensively, trying to open up a little bit more space to get that wingman plant to come down a little bit more safely, because you can just pop it over so many different walls. So they find a lot of value in the Dizzy being able to be a main element towards their setups, whether that be on retake or delaying executes when they're on defense, or in particular try to make safe plants happen from a bit of a different range. So I think if you're Troop, you have to get a read on when that utility is being spent, and can we find ways to try to punish that with our own initiation, because I feel like when you start to kind of hold off against M80, you let them make the first moves, they often run away with series. So important opening map here for Troop to really come out the gate swinging.
Yeah, I want to point out that orb control is really important, especially when you have a Gecko comp, because you're trying to get like a Thrash by round 3 if you possibly can, and sort of have it on sort of like every third round cadence. And that means that orb over on A will be hotly contested, and you will see some utility use from both sides to try and secure that, right? Like you have to spend a snake bite on that defensively a lot of the time to try and deny that forward position, but also try and, make sure you're not just handing that orb over every single round. That's something like we want to be watching early on here, because M80 are not a team that, gives up too many advantages early in the round. They don't want to take too many risks. But when it comes to taking control of that space, they're very coordinated, and their util usually almost hits.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see once we get into the game if Turtle Troop, like how much of their homework that they've done here and making sure that they can be shutting down this M80 squad. Because M80, I mean, this Icebox has been strong for them. And when there is kind of tendencies like we're going for the orbs, there is definitely an area to punish. And from Turtle Troop, that's what I want to see. But it's time to be heading into the game and head into our agent select. So I'm going to send you two both to Icebox, and I'll see you later.
Thank you. Yes, over to Icebox to start this series off. And we can see the comps here. So we do have the BCJ Gecko, right? And again, both teams are going without those duelists here, which is not essential, but like something we're seeing a little bit happen in sort of like Americas, for example, is that like even teams like Crew are trying to bring Reyna, make that a thing on this particular map. Obviously, that's Kesnet's individual play style. Going without the Jet shift means that like scaling aggressively into the back of A and getting that Rafters control is like much harder to accomplish, and it does mean that gives defenders a decent flood retake angle to come from, especially against Gecko, where Thrash can normally not get up there on those sort of clears.
Yeah, that was the big thing is, it is legitimately just down to the fact that the updraft not being available limits both of these two teams, especially from the offensive perspective of having to play from the front of the site and not playing your post plant deep in towards it, which, again, like I think both teams are fine with that, in terms of like allowing their opponent to do that, because they have the ability of kind of re-clearing in their own way. So there's a lot of curiosity built, I think, into, again, like you talked about, those early orb fights. How much will the defensive M80 try to challenge Turtle Trip to make that entry initially a little bit more difficult on them? The other side of things too, there is another kind of difference between these two squads in terms of, the macro side of how they find their success, not just on any given map, but just generally speaking. You're dealing with M80, who is the #1 pistol team in North America. They've only lost 3 pistol rounds. But the bad news here, besides that for Turtle Troop, is not only are they just kind of okay at pistols and M80 win a bunch, but you're dealing with Turtle Troop, who's one of the worst teams at playing from a disadvantage. So there are other elements to this game besides how the compositions are formed and what they want to do. There's a lot that could be determined in these first couple of rounds of each half.
Corey, they're trying to dissuade any early probes from M80, which is, again, not really something they're always known for. There's no real inclination here for the attackers to compete for that orb control. A very, dare I say it, glacial opening to this game.
Yeah, there's got to be something wrong right now, right? Like,
yeah, I think we have a DC. That would do it.
Say, surely everyone's just like not happy sitting around with knives out with no spike being carried. So I was going to say that would have been the most peculiar round one we've ever seen. But while we've got the time for it, I guess I'll kind of just dig into the numbers for all you nerds out there like me. 13-3 in the pistols for M80, but where are the strengths for Turtle Troop? They win 85% of rounds when they're at an eco advantage. They've only lost 9 And that is a whale above everybody else. So, you know, there is a lot, I think, riding into how these halves start, no matter what map we find ourselves on. If Troop wants to have a chance to win today against a perfect M80 squad, they need to reduce a lot of the early success that M80 get off their pistol and then find ways to build an eco advantage, because when they get there, they rarely lose out on it. So those are, I think, the key elements, generally speaking. It's not as easy as that maybe sounds, of course, but those are definitely the conditions for Troop here in terms of trying to find success versus the flawless squad in their group.
Something I'm looking out for as well, Shift, is if the Sova's able to make much of a difference here. He's obviously very
That's
effective.
A good point, yeah.
If you're attacking with that Sova, right, especially into the A site, being able to force someone off like one of those really early off, like those early contact off angles, like playing on top of, you know, the boxes at the back of A site, you know, preventing yourself from having to shoulder peek to sort of get in, especially when an operator, if an operator gets brought into the fold, which is something that WeeDid especially is not above, even as an Omen / sort of Viper player. That's obviously, you know, that scan agent is not something that the M80 composition has access to.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, you have great utility when you want to flood in, when you want to take these sites, that's all well and good. But in terms of sort of garnering some of that information outside of the 0 point, it's hard to do that safely.
Yeah.
And that's a problem if you're contacting into a team that has an economic advantage and is brought up into an operator or something similar to punish you.
Sure. And again, just the ability to like have area of control with things like the Gecko in hand for M80 comes with a lot more significance than you may assume. You also got to talk about just the Sentinel difference between the Killjoy and the Cypher. That also differentiates how both teams are going to want to set themselves up around the site, whether that be on the defensive side before an execute, or more in particularly, if there is a post-plant setup, how do you get yourself into a position to try to hold that, considering some of the other elements we talked about, not being able to necessarily get the quick burst up to high ground because there's no jet here. You kind of look towards those more stationary agents as potential influence makers. So yeah, there's a lot here, and the tech pauses give us chances to podcast over it. Hopefully we haven't, you know, talked your ears dry at the moment, but I think that like the minuscule parts of these two compositions, the differences in both pros and cons, are going to be the difference in not just this map, but likely the rest of this entirety of the series. And if you're Troop, I think this is one of those things of, you can't make mistakes on this map in particular in those difference maker moments, talking about getting Sova value versus not allowing the Gecko to get a full value like we've seen time and time again. So those are, I think, where I'm looking at.
We thought about the Cypher on Icebox. You know,
yeah,
it's interesting where like it can be so dominated by Viper's Pit, or at least trying to play around that the Killjoy can give you a lot of value and let you really get that info through mid via alarm bot. The Cypher seems an interesting choice here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, you know, we'll have to come to see what Troop wants to do with it when they get to the defensive side in particular. Like, are we just going to essentially see him hard stack over towards the A site? Because let's be honest, like, trap wires and cyber cages over towards B are just kind of walked around. So, like, I think that's where a lot of the conversation has often tilted towards favoring the Killjoys, that she can be so much more versatile to play on both sites, where the Cypher kind of feels like, yeah, you could throw trap wires to watch flanks on the offense, maybe stop some lurking plays defensively as well. But largely speaking, the value comes off of the A setup from Cypher, because that's the only tight corridor spot of the map. So it's a peculiar one for sure.
Without a doubt. We're going to stow to Gabba for a second, and we're going to head to a break as we wait on having this one player reconnect to the lobby, and we'll be underway with your first game of the day. Don't go too far, of course. This is M80 versus Turtle Troop for that first spot in Group B.
fix.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. We are ready to go here on Icebox, our first map of the series between M80 and Turtle Troop. It's a battle of first and second in this Group B shift, and there's a lot on the line. That coveted #1 spot is what they're playing for.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is really just kind of a poetic way to kind of end this group stage for these two teams, because I'll be the first one to admit that M80 has not been the conversation starter when it comes to who's at the top of the group, but there is a chance here with how Troop has played that outside of the one little slip they had versus Winthrop, that they could actually surpass M80 with a win. So a group that we kind of often said, I often said, was pretty one-sided, and who was going to be the second best team, we could actually have that be completely awry here, depending on how this series goes. We already kind of, again, podcasted on the differences between these two compositions, but there is a lot of pressure, as mentioned, to try to come out with a little bit of success in these opening pistol wins if you're Troop.
Troop are trying to imply some mid-control their shift. They flash over towards Kitchen and have a poison orb set up in mid. So M80 don't exactly know how many resources they've dedicated to this part of the map. We have an orb taken, of course, as is customary. And it is Turtle Troop, like we discussed earlier on, with that Sova difference here, as BCJ is on the Gecko.
And I think the thing here is, again, like, how much utility is going to be spent to contest if you're M80? Do they kind of wait to see what gets popped and then have something in the bag in terms of a counter? We're about to find out, because it's 5-man in. There's that Sova utility. Wall goes up, first comes through.
BCJ may not have been lit there. He's able to tuck onto the site and find the first. Nitro assisting there from the site. And that crow's nest, Nitro getting pressured though by Adder on that off angle. Turtle Troop here are down to just the one. Stella falls here as they can't even get the spike down. Adder stranded over on Dice.
Yeah. And that's the thing about this, is just like, without being able to get that backside control, you have to be able to win these in close areas very convincingly. I mean, there's just, both these two compositions are very rigid in terms of how they're going to set up defensively. So many differences, of course, in the ability to use things like the Sova versus the Gecko, the Cypher versus the Killjoy, but fact of the matter is, it's hard for both of these two teams from the offensive perspective to get that next level deeper. So you have to be good in their opening engagements. You have to win convincingly. 3-for-1s, usually probably going to be preferred. 2-for-2s, even trades aren't going to be enough, you'd think, to really lock down control of either of these sides comparatively to what we kind of have seen in the past with Jet Cops.
No flashes this round for Turtle Troop. Not one to speak of. And Corey spent his last round again trying to set up that sort of mid-fake. Didn't really happen when they wanted to hit the site. If you're contacting constantly now up against an outlaw, you're probably going to have a bad time.
Yeah. To say it plainly, Uber.
It's bad.
Yeah.
That's the prognosis, doctor.
I didn't realize you had your PhD.
Never. I'm calling you doctor.
What the? I definitely don't have my PhD.
You got a PhD in that dirty little shimmy, baby.
Well, now it's just down to, again, these fights, you just have to try to break up the site as best you possibly can. It's just not going to happen here. Not with Classic. So Trip just doing what they can to try to make some punish happen. Likely not going to be much sweat, though, for M80 here. Although, I say that, Nismo in a little bit of trouble. Bailed out. Then we got a 5v3.
There's always another layer. Here's M80 set up. And this is Turtle Troop, obviously, who are ranked 9th when it comes to playing from an eco disadvantage in challenges. Spoilers, that's not good. They tend to struggle when they're behind on these weapons.
Accuracy.
Oh, my goodness. And it's just raw contact for the entirety of this round, really, for Turtle Troop. I think Nitro knows exactly what the plan is from now. WeeDid tucks himself there onto site. Might head over towards screen, see if it is cover from rafters. And this one's all done with the crying.
And maybe Stellar picks up one here. I think his footsteps were heard, though. Yeah, sure were. So easy follow-up for Xander, but at least you get the spike planted. Thing is, it's a true bonus for M80, and this is not a composition of weapons to be taken lightly. 3 Bulldogs, Guardian, and an Outlaw. Like, this could win a round versus 5 rifles without question, especially, again, considering how the play styles for these two squads are going to look like. So, yeah, this is a very treacherous round 3 here for Troop. Have to have it. And if you can find a way to do it cleanly, or at least get a spike plant to help supply some extra resource going into the follow-up, that feels also kind of like a necessity, because this is a very winnable round for M80.
M80 have distributed Nismo here over to the B side, so we'll have a double setup over towards yellow. Looks like it might just be a default here to start the round for Turtle. True, that's not ideal. We talked about the weaponry here still being pretty compelling for M80. They've already drawn blood.
Yeah, I mean, the knife comes out even a little bit later. That's just a straight up, we're going to team shoot this angle and see what happens. Now Nitro even catches a couple of toes to count over the middle of the map. Follow-up offensive knife doesn't really convert too much, and here's the problem, like you kind of mentioned, like not a lot in terms of the flash ability outside of just Corey with one flashpoint. Everything else is going to just have to be by hoping you get good utility from Stellar to connect for some good information, and as the opening dart gets denied, now it's just down to the Owl drone, and that's really not going to find too much either. It gives a little bit of space, sure, but M80 are on the rotation. They're here to contest this.
There's that flash there. It did at least force B-Dog to fight that on his own, but players from Rastas were forced off the angle. But here come Turtle Troop now, hunkering down. Now from outside the site, a Bulldog and an Outlaw have to be able to peer in here and find some degree of success. Xena sees an opportunity to upgrade a weapon, but needs to deal with WeeDid first. It's an easy spray down to the Phantom. And then a Koala Noob needs to make use of the Ghost here. And it's just the one. Turtle Troop get on the board.
And just a small note, and this isn't anything to really dig your teeth into yet, but we talked a lot about what Cypher can bring to the table in the post plant. Trapwire was saved to be used to help isolate that retake. It was able to cut off that front side towards the front boxes, so it forces M80 to kind of have to run around it or they'll get caught. And there's also a Cyber Cage that gets placed a little bit extra forward once the spike is being planted. That does get popped to once again make life a little bit more messy for M80. So again, the lack of ability to burst through for both of these two teams, both on the execute offensively and the retake defensively, is really going to be, again, a big difference maker in this map. So keep your eye to see what Adder's able to do if they get the spike planted continually.
They put BCJ over B here because he doesn't need to fight for the orb. Thrash is already online. Stella does spot the cross here to yellow. Koala Noob a little isolated for the time being. Needs to actually TP back onto B itself. Now M80 playing from a position that will leave them on the outside once that Viper wall comes up. Xena, of course, wants to try and make use of this one-way here, and now that the defenders encroach back into the space, here's Thrash, caught full close, two! That's dirty stuff. Absolutely dominant here from Koala Noob, who steps up and takes a couple of more, and he's aligned for the ace. Nismo miserly won't give it to him, but that was a decisive round from M80.
And you call that perfectly, Mitch, where it's, hey, if this wall goes up to the offense for Troop, M80 may have a tough time trying to get through and contest, but they step right through before the execute happens. So we asked the question, how primed and ready would M80 be in wanting to contest sites, not allow Troop to get to the front doors of either A or B? That is a prime example of them wanting to use the utility earned off of that Thresh that, of course, you mentioned. We're going to see a lot of it in this map in particular. And hey, you use it, you find full value following up with flashes behind it. You never let Troop even execute. So huge tempo setter here for M80, now with a major advantage coming into round number 5.
And it's the one way that lets them play forward past that Viper wall. We see already the smoke's being deployed here by Koala Noob to make that push out of B that much more laborious. BCJ here happy to play forward. And now we'll see some shifting amongst the defenders. Nismo taking a forward position over on Pipe. So A is pretty much on lock. Mid is covered with this KJ util, and Turtle Troop now grouping up for the hit.
Yeah, and now how do you contest this? Aldrin comes first. That does get a tag. BCJ has to give this up. Paranoia quickly on the follow-up, plus the teleport away. So once again, M80 respecting the burst that can still happen with a 5-man hit. There's the follow-up from Dizzy. And again, look at the isolation. It stops the peak from one side. You get the execution from the other. Spike does go down, but big numbers here for M80 on the retake.
BCJ here getting another crack at Dizzy in the next 8 seconds. WeeDid just has to be embedded here on the site. Not much you can really make happen with Turtle Troop's buy, but WeeDid is able to stand and deliver. BCJ falls. Xander has the pinch here. It would have been him or Nitro to take that one away. And now it's Corey with no choice but to hold M1 and pray. Another one stacked up here for M80. This time again, forced to play from behind that Viper wall, but Turtle Troop had no choice but to try and contact through it.
And I think if you're M80, you're fine with that in this particular round because you just don't know if there's going to be things like stingers in the mix. You know, you just don't want to get caught, and then all of a sudden if you play too far forward, now you're giving away rifles. So, you know, as soon as that Owl drone connects out of BCJ, Sarai's call just to back off, wait for reinforcements, wait for help, and then isolate. Because WeeDid actually almost makes a bit of a mess of that retake attempt. Him tucked away in that corner, finding one. He almost gets the Phantom and gets away, which could have given them a lifeline. But that's the thing about M80. As good as Turtle Troop can be at the eco advantage, M80 also very good at full buy situations. And now we get that first instance of the operator that you were kind of alluding towards in rounds earlier.
Yeah, so how do they force Koala Noob off this angle, if at all? Looks like he's going to be playing from, again, one of those higher ground positions here. Yeah, over towards Pipes here. So I want to take that far forward positioning for contact. And Ada is going to see very little from that upper position. Nismo walks, though, into it. There's an opening here.
Where you are.
And it's going to be a new rule theft for Ada to get a read.
And the thing about this is Turtle Troop do not have to commit while this threat is going on. You can just use it to kind of see if the defense wants to rotate or move. And I love this. Try to get some mid-map control, but Nitro somehow gets a read on this. And the second, that is absolutely freaking beautiful. Essentially a 1v2, he finesses. Null command is already out, and Troop have to commit to trying to get on to B now.
No Viper's Pit available, though, with WeeDid out of the picture. That's not something that Turtle Troop can access here in the post plant. Nano Swarm thrown over towards that spike location. Here is Koala Noob will make a brief reposition behind the poison orb, though. Turtle Troop can bunker down here at yellow.
The problem is they don't really have much from Adder here. That's the only real issue. Spy cam not at the ready, just a one trap wire, not going to place it. So the lockdown's going to get called, and you kind of have to step into this, I think, if you're Troop. And yeah, they're going to use also the Hunter's Fury to try to deny while also getting an elimination. There's a chance they can still hold this post plant.
They're going to go for it, though. Corey being forced back. Just as the spike got tapped briefly. Koala Noob, no, not in a position to intervene whatsoever. And without any reflank from mid there, Turtle Troop was still able to hold it down. The Hunter's Fury, absolutely pivotal.
And I'm a bit surprised that after the couple of the kills come through from Nitro that no one does try to slip through the middle of the map, especially with the lockdown at the ready. And I'm sure, of course, they had the comm that the Hunter's Fury was there for a potential counter. I don't know. It definitely felt a little bit one-dimensional, maybe a bit of a miscue there for M80 considering where those eliminations at the mid-round came from. But regardless, a brilliant round for Troop to be able to get themselves on for a plant while also finding themselves an opportunity to lock down a post plant at what was essentially a 3v5 from the get-go.
Nice round from Turtle Troop. Nothing too fancy. Making good use of a lot of those ultimates they banked up.
Poison's off.
So Viper's Pit over here on A. This is definitely going to dissuade Turtle Troop for stepping up. They, of course, don't have access to Killjoy, so countering that is no simple issue.
Well, the other side of this is with not just the forward Vipers, but there was a very forward knife that gets thrown, and the only thing Troop has to try to get some space back is the Aldra, which means that you don't have it to execute on site. And to make matters worse, Nismo wasn't seen by this. So now it's just down to Troop. Where do you commit to? You either have to push the Viper's Pit, push right into the heart of the KJ setup at mid, or work off angles that you haven't cleared yet at B. There's not a good option anywhere on the map right now for Troop.
Nismo was left embedded as Koala Noob was pushed off the angle. Great patience here from WeeDid. Koala Noob now clinging to life. But here's the flank timing. It's pretty darn good. Nismo gets his and then gets on out. This isn't going to speed things up for Turtle Troop whatsoever. They don't really have mid control. They've got no presence there, and they still have to play through this Viper's Pit, and Xander is lying in wait.
Yeah, there's just nowhere to go here. They would just have to win some unbelievable
30
1v1s.
seconds left.
And BCJ is he's guarding the ropes just to make matters worse. What? How does he get that kill? Did BCJ just fall asleep? That's an execute. They can get on the site here.
And it does. Touches down, but it's the lifeless body that makes contact. Spike goes loose, and Xander's able to make good here. The shorty will find the second, and then that lack of mid presence gets exposed as Turtle Troop make their way up there a little late. Find nothing.
This is something that, yes, that setup defensively becomes a little bit more tough to break down because the Viper's Pit's in play at A, and it allows you to kind of double commit towards a double stack over towards B to get someone into the cubby, but that is something that could continue to happen with or without the Viper's Pit if you're M80. We talked about that orb control at a huge linchpin towards success, especially for the Gecko. But the thing about it is, if you're Troop, you have to take these early engagements in the first 30 seconds. You have to at least counter some of this utility because it's so easy for M80 to do stuff like this. Put a knife out, get a little bit of free fire, and control some space. This time, though, Troop looking to force the issue.
BCJ not able to go for the orb there. Thrash only one kill away. Here comes the push, though. It's aggressive. Corey going to fall instantly now as Dizzy heads in over the top. We see Koala Noob peering in from rafters. Sees all that util, but Nitro has made it a very target-bare environment. Great hold here, anchoring from the KJ, and a flawless for M80.
Yep, and that's another one of those moments where Troop doesn't have any options. No weapons, so you just try to force something. But I still think the play style will have to resemble that for the next couple of rounds here if you're Troop. You're looking to find success on the offense. The problem here, and what you need to be talking about the timeout, is it's not just how do we want to play the map in these full versus full buy rounds. you have to get through the next handful with a couple of key ultimates that are back and at the ready again. First time we're going to possibly see a null command for Nismo, second Thrash at the ready, Killjoy ult is also likely going to be played again before we get to round 12. So, you know, again, the matters of not just Troop finding success in the map being an issue right now, on top of that, the compounding factor is the fact that there's much key ultimates that M80 can use to really lock down these setup ideas that they've already put together in the first 9 rounds. And this has been a very tough half for Troop in terms of trying to figure out how do we create and gain any space. And that's why I just always fear watching teams try to play M80 on Icebox. They're so damn good at it.
This Stellar Al drone at the start of the round is going to be pivotal. They have to find a way to force Koala Noob off one of those angles, and they've done it pretty well. Like on the B side, they were able to force Koala Noob off that pretty early. He was then funneled into mid and almost fell to WeeDid holding just like an angle, you know, through under tube for most of the round. That's something to keep an eye on here. Koala Noob obviously still toting that weapon, still the threat.
And I think for the Aldrone conversation, like, there's no cheap way to clear angles for Troop, because the Aldrone is something that you want to try to open up the site. So let's be honest, the recon bolt's going to get destroyed more often than not. You don't want to necessarily use the knife to clear out space if you're on the offense, because you want that to delay all of the counter utility that could possibly come through for M80 players on site. So it's just like, it's a tough roll of the dice to know what you're going to spend to try to get some space. And you can see, again, they're kind of handcuffed here, playing from pretty much in spawn still, our Troop.
Well, this Nitro plays very Steel-esque. He has full control of mid and basically reads B-Dog sort of TPing to top of tube with that turret. So they have to pull out of there and spend both their Omen TPs in order to reposition. And look at how far Nitro's been able to push up. He's starting to brim with confidence.
Yeah, and he could just be a microphone here. He can just wait to hear footsteps as they have to go and, you know, make a decision. I mean, it's not going to be a slow play for Troop. It has to be something quick. So if Nitro can catch any sound cues, that will alert this defense to whatever this execute's going to be with 100% confidence.
I don't know, so he has to hit on this Thrash down timing, but he doesn't have anyone to hit with. He at least has taken some position. So much like you see with the Trailblazer, once the Trailblazer goes, you try and re-establish that more forward placement. Gizmo here very much outside of A, and that are unexpected. Just lurking over towards that A site now. The neural theft going to reveal this setup over a B, but it's not going to be quick enough for Corey, who's going to be brought down by Xander. Now fighting over towards yellow. Stella has no choice but to contact into the operator line. Not where you want to be. And Koala Noob is going to feast.
There's time. There's only 8 seconds left. Spike is down. Nitro's off the flank. They get the spike carrier. Oh my goodness. And this is what I'm talking about. The delay from M80, their ability to contest these executes, or at least contest early ground that Troop are just not able to get forward with, is causing these issues, Mitch. And what looked to be a round-winning play by Adder on that 1v1 lurk plus more, it goes completely awry because it's just too late in the round for Troop to actually get a spike plant in.
And that was the weak side, at least for M80. So Adder has the right idea, but he's raw contacting. It's him and a bloody Viper. Like, you don't have a great way to sort of walk up there outside of timing and playing around a lot of that scouting util and just being in the right place. VCJ now is going to play forward at the start of this round here. Make a little bit of noise. He's where the spike is headed. Cam blown up instantly.
Yeah, the Cam at least gives them the ability to contest this forward ground at a touch. I mean, you're not going to be able to over-peak this if you're M80. You just don't want to fall victim to a stray sheriff shot. But, man, it's just, you could see it every single round. Like, you could get the story of this first half just by watching the first 20 seconds of every single round. M80 is just dominating the map as soon as the barriers drop. And that is not been something that Troop has been able to pick up on, or at least find corrections for to this point.
Stella just confirmed that Koala Noob isn't playing over at A at the start of that round. He has actually moved up into that position now. But Aldrone got used, taken out pretty quick. WeeDid just sat out there in the open. Nitro is more than happy to oblige. That is an unfortunate position to be in now, is your ability to imply any other positioning outside of A is gone.
Yeah. And now the counter paranoia, timed perfectly, fragment to follow and replace. Yeah. I mean, what do you say? I mean, decent punish here for Troop, but this doesn't make a difference. There's so much cash on the other side at this point. And this is where the fear is. You know, this doesn't start with just the pistol win, you know, from M80's perspective, but this is one of the worst teams at playing at an eco disadvantage. 13-42, 23% win rate. Like you said, number 9 right now in VCL NA. Not good, and M80 are just getting away with highway robbery on this defensive half thanks to their map control.
Corey will, you guessed it, contact another angle and get brought down here over at A. I just don't think... Yeah, Turtle Troop seem like they're not able to get value out of the utility. Like, there's no guarantee you're going to get a confirm off a, you know, a recon dart over on one of these sites. Like, it's over outside of that one round where you see the Hunter's Fury bring down the lockdown and end up sort of converting the round there for Stella. Like, we are seeing so much of this swinging angles, like one after another. And M80 can exploit that to a great degree. I mean, we already talked about the operator's role in that, but even outside of that, like, Nitro is not going to be shifted off a site so easily. He is feasting.
Yeah, it's one of those situations too where you also just, again, there's not a good option in terms of how do you clear space if you're Turtle Troop. I mean, you have to use so much just to gain, it feels like so little. I mean, now you've got no Aldrone. Wall goes up, Null Command gonna get spent, the pressure's already mounted, so Corey's looking to make an execute effort, but M80 have fallen back and they've got so much utility to retake with the lockdown and an Null Command of their own.
It will end up being a bit of a fun retake here. VALORANT gets himself pretty well embedded here at backside. He knows that Xander will be sort of waiting the dark cover and lets him get here. He's going to be attacking Viper Spin. VALORANT going to find Nitro. What a flick! The correction to take the head clean off BCJ's shoulders. Now stay in the Viper bit. There's a lot to work with here. This might get brought down, but maybe returned to the fray here by Xander. Just I guess an afterthought of that snake bite over towards that site location. And we go to the pit. We're thinking about it. Knife there gets some info as well. After Nismo's back in the fight, and Xander here's going to be a problem. To the back of Yellow now, but we're running out of time. Not a lot of it to work with. The Shorty doesn't find anything for Koala Noob. That's an operator dropped here, and Xander, too, will be dragged down. Yeah,
really good from B-Dog. Like you said, he gets himself so far forward, but he's also communicating where the retakes come from. You can hear all those little pitter-patter footsteps up top, and then the read on the player cutting over towards mid-tube. That's where it really all starts, because as soon as that kill goes down, you can take all of your focus to the players that are above you. Yeah, really, really well done by B-Dog here. Just to get the information transmitted. Hunter's Fury also called, I think, while those footsteps are starting to approach. You know, a Null Command could potentially come in with that play for a retake, so you pop the Hunter's Fury, see if you can connect. Works out really nicely. But still, you're in round 12. And you've got full utility available, and M80 are looking to get even more aggressive with a one-way smoke judge. Lots of footsteps around, and Xander just can't get caught looking the wrong way. And otherwise, if he finds good connection here, he could just win the round in the first 30 seconds.
That fake TP from Big Dog, though, is quite threatening to Xander. Implying that someone could be up above. Behind him, here goes the judge. Only going to be the one for Xander, but that should do it. Plenty of info as well. As the Turtle Troop players start to filter in. Flash, but they don't push onto the site with it here. Neural Theft is going to give them what they need.
Yeah, Koala can't peek this. He has to stay alive. Do what you can to maybe find a peek. Great paranoia up top. WeeDid finds one. There is a transition kill through mid-map, though, for the defenders trying to come quickly, and they still have the lockdown.
We have a player as Snowman as well. Nismo's been able to get himself embedded right back there. So once their Viper Wall comes down, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. A trade here. BCJ able to come out on top. Suppressed for the time being, so no wingman available, and B-Dog finds that one from Yellow. All of Nismo's playing right back at Snowman now, unraveled.
Great mosh.
Time for a clutch here. Corey, though, just steps ahead of it. Doesn't really get given the hot foot by it, and a double swing should claim this now. BCJ will drop, and Turtle Troop get another consecutive round, and again, it's about playing forward up towards that B side.
Switching sides.
You pointed it out. What paranoia that was.
It was a great paranoia, and it's one of those things that, again, you cannot, if you're a troop, looking back on it, just kind of pick and prod with a little bit of utility. If you're going to use it, you have to use all of it. Gain space as fast as you possibly can, especially at the front doors of those sites. So great adjustments from Troop in those last two rounds to kind of get that awareness and find ways to punish an M80 split, largely off of the information gained that time by the neural theft. And now we get to kind of take our approach towards what does the Cypher want to do here? Because I think most players would assume that you put yourself set up to where your utility can find encompassing value, which often leads you to believe it's going to go over towards A, but off this pistol, you got a spy cam set up for Adder with maybe the ability for him to kind of play rogue towards B with everyone else stacking the box over towards mid. This is a 1-3-1 stack here for Troop's defense.
Lets you strong side part of the map here pretty comfortably, excuse me. Nismo brings a flash into this round, though. Of course, that knife will be crucial. The cyber cage set up in advance here over on the A side. Giving a bit more of the fighting chance. Stack towards mid now is trended over in the A direction, so there will be potential for that retake from Rafters. Shock dart thrown out, no connection. Xander trying to move up.
Yeah, this high ground control from Nismo, it's going to, again, be hard to challenge, and he does get at least poked at, pushed off, and now the defensive ball comes up. Retake should be on the way quickly, Mitch.
Denner under pressure. WeeDid going to drop down and find him straight away. Instantly clears BCJ. Now from behind the Viper wall, M80 has to flood. Nitro pressure on the top of 410, but is able to win that one out here still with a bit of health. But B-Dog types him as he tries to round the corner. It's all on Nismo now with only 38 HP. Nice right click. B-Dog might still be an issue though. Time is something worth considering today's nuts.
Go back to fighting.
Long range, right click, Zippo clutch for your boy Nismo.
And it's so tough because I get it from the other perspective. You don't want to just charge into a right click, but you also at the same rate can't just allow him to take these little jump shoulder peeks where some of the burst of the right click is going to land almost every single time. I mean, that looked like it was a done deal for Troop. The retake was so clean off of the wall. The utility to follow reveals even some of that post-plant setup, but yeah, you just kind of get chewed up by the right click, and the strength of M80 in the pistols continues to be a problem for everyone in Group B. 15-3, my man. That's nuts.
Back towards mid here again, weak siding B. Are your defenders? Change of cam location here. This probably allows maybe Adon to play even further off of that side. Okay, no one hiding. Here towards yellow, that's a good sign. Cam cleared now as we start to see M80 inch into the side.
And I think if you're M80, you know, you have similar issues in terms of being able to burst forward, but what you do have the ability to kind of work with is the repeatable abilities of BCJ. So you are trying to bleed out Troop's utility as much as humanly possible before you commit, because there's just not much of it flat out.
Is he spotted, taken down? Easy pickings as the players up on the high ground start to fall here. BCJ with eyes towards mid is able to find one headed towards him. That's enough. We've seen everything we need to. Is M80. We've got Nitro embedded here up mid.
Yeah.
Potentially catch the rotate now as B-Dog and Stellar are going to have to rack some brain cells.
And they've got 2 shock darts, Mitch. That's what I'm talking about. This is like, there's so much repeatable ability out of the get-go to try to pull things
30
from
seconds
Troop.
left.
And, you know, to kind of foreshadow a touch and maybe throw maybe too bold of a prediction out early. If you're Troop, similar situations towards what you did on the offense, you're going to have to contest and move quickly. The good news here is you're down to a 2v2, recon darts re-earned, and you've got 2 bulldogs collected. This is still winnable on the retake.
I mean, I like that they're able to maintain a high-low setup here, even on the rotate, Stellar and B-Dog. And get up close, the ball hope to drop together, but that's not going to be possible. And Ismo and the Guardian, the match made in heaven. Or hell, if you're a Turtle Truth fan now, is that's M80 getting out to 10.
Yeah. So now this is it right here, by the way. Troop have to have awareness towards how do we stop M80 before they can actually even show you what they're about to do. I mean, call it, you know, a bonus round here, but with Vandals in the mix and Guardians and Bulldogs and the utility that M80 can continue to throw at you, Troop have to dominate here. They have to cause an early issue that M80 kind of stray away or get a little shaky about like what the game plan normally is. You have to have something formidable and something with some good force here for Troop.
Big info. That's big info. 3 players flashed off that knife. Corey able to spray through here and find Nismo. This will bring M80 to a screeching halt for the time being, and already see Xander getting activated in mid, actually pushing towards that poison orb.
Poison's on.
And this is, honestly, for M80, this is huge. Not just because you get Xander here, but they're not going to have much resistance at mid, you'd think, because often the Killjoy will put a turret up on the ramp that watches tube. With the Cypher in play, you don't have that same ability anymore. So M80, this is like an information gathering mission of how much success are we going to be able to find through mid. Even though Xander falls, that's going to be a learned lesson that M80 may start to use in future rounds, pending that they don't win this round here, which, well, it's starting to come back into their way as it's a 3v5 now, 3v3.
Okay, just the one Bulldog here. 2 Vandals to play with now with M80 in the post plant. Cyber Cage deployed here for Adder to try and split up the plant location. And there was BCJ Fall trying to plant here.
And they still have good tools available. I mean, you've got the Paranoia available, Alarm Bot, and a Nanostorm, but Nitro's a bit stuck off the reveal. Gonna try to force the commitment. Does anyone swing to peek at this? Not yet. This is all about can they isolate Nitro? Oh, he still gets 1 for 1. That's not bad at all. And then Koala through the smoke gets a freebie. Now he baits the teleport 1v1.
Still a TP available here for Koala Noob. WeeDid just taps it. Sends in that snakebite over towards yellow, but Koala Noob could be anywhere as far as he's concerned. Okay, well, apparently he knew exactly where he was. WeeDid does it again. And Turtle Troop get themselves finally around in this half.
Yeah, really well done by Troop. And for what it's worth, that early knife thrown over towards B, I love that idea. Because let's be candid, if talking about where the Dizzy finds value, it has to go up and over boxes. Playing it down this green alley, not as successful. So I love the idea of using just the knife as something free to gain a little bit of defensive space, to where, again, if you're looking at that from the side of M80, you're gonna have to use more than just Gecko utility to try to clear that angle off. Now, the thing about that will be, again, if you're committing heavy towards trying to get B focus, what do you do to guard mid? Because that information mission from Xander was a pretty valuable one, but because of the purchases they put through, actually, M80 will not have your typical 4th round full buy here. Ghost, Stinger, and really just the Thrash as extra utility here for M80.
Poison Orb over in mid. Could have drawn some out of that A site. But in fact, everybody here on Turtle Troop hold their ground. Thrash checks close here for VCJ. We'll have it available for a potential post-plant scenario should it be required. And this is Turtle Troop now scaling up into mid.
Yeah, and the null command on top of this, so
Careful
you can
here.
even use the Thrash just to clear more space again. Wrap it around yellow, check over towards Cubby, then bring it back and have it for the post plan. That's the power of Gecko. But interestingly enough, M80 kind of back off, and they've read the timing of this pretty darn well. TTR have already rotated largely off of A, and the only thing really in their way right now is a deep B-Dog. I mean, they've got full mid-focus for Troop, and the defense will be pretty vacant from the back of the A site.
And drew Stellar onto an angle there in mid, but nobody was able to connect with him. Here's Thrash, round 2 Electric Boogaloo. B-Dog gets spotted pretty much straight away, but can you push into this space safely? The answer, yes. Xander gets there. Ignores a Nano Swarm and Kylie. That's a happy special for you. Stella at least is able to trade there from those rafters, but it's going to be Nismo getting brought back into the fight. And Addo, suppressed, has to walk up and meet his maker.
Completely outplayed. And that's the power of what M80 could do with the Gecko, flat out. I mean, you talk about, again, the moments of Trooper going to have to force a commitment likely early to try to control space, but how do you do that when a Thrash is available in round 4 of the half? It's just so silly, man. So now 11-5, and the table has turned to where it's just Ghosts for now. Also, great utility isolation on top of just using the Thrash in the first place, but this is problematic spots. It feels like a round for Troop. You kind of have to win some sort of a thrifty if you want to have a chance at winning the map, so tall ask. But this is, again, I like this idea defensively for Troop. That knife completely counters out any early utility, and it leads to free space. Now, do you need to stay here with 2 players? That's the real question. You feel a little bit more maybe obligated because you're just on pistols, but I like this from Troop. If they can find a way to continue to do this and find success with it, there is a linchpin towards them finding more defensive rounds if they can survive through this half a little longer.
It's huge, though, that they got that Dizzy off before the 0 point came in. They knew that we had a very close M80 hold here. Turtle Troop did. And that's allowing Corey to set up here and wait till Nismo gets a little bit antsy. Corey trying to flash himself out, but that one ends pretty quickly. I'll go with the bang, I suppose. Out of here, moving up towards yellow. And M80 happy util to try and clear this. Force this Cypher away. There is a tripwire that we can swing off. Paranoia, gonna be too slow. Ada gets his one.
Yeah, and that's the other issue about this is even if it weren't just pistols, all you need is the front side of the site for Wingman to dive on it. Now the Viper's Pit is here. I mean, how do you contest this? Do you kind of counter Viper's Pit? I mean, you kind of have to play for the round here, but that's about it.
Play off the Sova Dart, that's one option.
Yeah.
You can counter pit this. Doesn't feel nearly as productive. WeeDid going to secure the space in order to upgrade to a Sheriff. Nitro, though, has the angle. WeeDid eventually challenges, falls. BCJ plunges into the pit and finds himself 2. M80 now, match point.
Yeah, it's
Match point.
It's tough, man, because the end of the first half, great moments from Troop in terms of finding ways to adjust and at least find some sort of success from the offensive side, making life a little bit more difficult for M80's defense. And kind of the same situation here where it's like you lose that opening pistol in a 1v2, by the way, to a Classic and a Cubby, and that puts you so far behind the 8 ball that you don't really get a chance to continue to kind of rip apart some of this defensive map control that we've been looking for. Knife is going to go deep this time again. Adder likely going to try to follow up off of that to create that space towards B, but the Dizzy already lands. B-Dog still stepping up. 1-for-1's not terrible, but it also doesn't feel like enough if you're Troop.
Nitro has the lockdown. So that Viper's Pit that WeeDid didn't spend last round can be nullified. WeeDid doesn't have a safe position to deploy that anyway. Not at this stage of the round. Poison Orb would have let him move up here towards pipes, but suppressed midway through. That gets taken down. He knows that Zen is trying to swing the angle. There's not a lot of trade options here for M80 to punish that positioning. See WeeDid drop down.
Good counter utility, stopping the lockdown. Gives Troop a chance here defensively with the wall going back up. Plus, they have the ability to command this if they do read the hit.
Plenty of info there off pipes. Zen, though, still able to win it out. Corey out of the picture. WeeDid hear that spot just gets checked by raw contact, but it's traded out effectively. That's something M80 can do on rounds like this. Down to 3. Hunter's Fury trying to, deny plant by Wingman. It does. BCJ has to step up and give it a tickle himself. It's going to be out of now swinging. It's just contact, raw contact for the rest of this round. We're in the post plant.
Yeah, and that Hunter's Fury trying to deny the spike plant doesn't actually clear anything front of this major box. So retaking again is just going to have to be lateral. Try to find ways to get in from the front without much else to clear, and there's just nothing else left. Thrash will probably put this one to rest. Stellar, good luck, have fun.
Doesn't quite get there, Thrash, but I think the point has been made. Stella now has to go 1v3 in order to keep Turtle Troop in this game. Recon's just come up. Tough part of the map to make good use of it, though. And M80 will group up as 3 for that added insurance. Stella knows now where they are. Alarmbot, though, knows where he is. One at a time comes Nitro. Nismo on a swing, and that will secure it here. 13-5 is your final score on Icebox.
Man, it's so hard to play this M80 team and this composition on that map. It's so difficult. And again, great moments. Troop found some areas of success. They found some advantages based on their own composition. Again, kind of going back to all the different things that we were talking about, but it's still one of those situations that I think you can kind of summarize and put the spark notes on saying, if you are Troop, nothing feels good to use that early in a round on offense to try to clear space. It just doesn't. A knife doesn't do enough. Aldrone you really want for the execute. Paranoia you need to stop the retake. Like, there's just so many things that you have to use that utility for later in the round that it doesn't feel good to use so early on. So the advantages of being able to repeat abilities from the side of the get-go, again, showing its presence and its power. And Troop, even though they did find some opportunities like we talked about, kind of overloading and playing a little bit with more aggression, more proactivity, and forcing the issue, so to speak, it just was one of those things that M80 starts to get ultimates, and it's just it's so hard to paint that picture of how do you beat the M80 squad with that composition if you're Troop and not willing to kind of overload something early to make sure you dominate one part of the map or the other. It's a tough map to play versus M80, and we saw every reason why in that instance.
Turtle Troop looks sluggish today as well. They just didn't really seem to have the answer or be able to unravel what M80 were putting together on Icebox. Stick around, though. Another chance for Turtle Troop to even up this series and relay their claim to top spot in this Group B. So stick around. More from Challengers after the break.
Outlaw, because I feel way, like, at least better myself with the Outlaw than the Marshall.
Outlaw, because the gun just looks elite, you know? Like, how many games can we just have this nice 2-shot gun that sounds like that? We pull out the bullets, you know? Like, it reminds you of a Western. I feel like I'm Clint Eastwood in the flesh when I'm using that gun.
Marshall for the price. I think it messes up too much with your economy if you buy the Outlaw, but I think the gun itself, the Outlaw is much better, obviously.
Outlaw. Dude, I barely ever buy the Marshall now.
Outlaw. It just one-shots people like 90% of the rounds. Like, if people are not smart with their money, then you just have an Outlaw and they're dead. That's it.
I personally can't use either, but if I had to choose, I'd probably use the Outlaw just because it does more damage, and if I hit my shot, I can get rewarded.
Controversial, but I think Marshall.
I like Icebox more because I feel like the T side, you have more control over what happens, like attack.
Breeze, I really like Breeze before the halls got reopened, but now that the halls are open again, I think Icebox is a better map. I think there's more strategy you can have, and like more, just a little simpler to play, but you have better protocols on Icebox, so I prefer Icebox.
Breeze is definitely better. It's just so much more brighter and fun rather than the dreary Icebox.
Ooh, it's tough because, like, Icebox was so fun when I had 2 jet dashes and 2 updrafts and fucking 10 smokes, but I can't do as much as I used to do. And plus, everyone knows like every peek you can do in the game now, so I don't know. I think I like Breeze more.
I like the Breeze change initially because it kind of changed the way you had to play the map, but since they reverted halls, you could just play it the exact same as before. Same with Icebox, that didn't really change too much, so it's just played the exact same way. Both are alright, but I'd say Breeze is probably better.
I personally like Icebox more. I think it's fun, especially just like in casual play too. The map is pretty like basic, and you can just like lock in like duelist if you want, and kind of like still win the game, especially in like ranked.
I gotta go with Icebox.
Swift play. I think I have like 1,000 Swift plays clocked in. I do like 5 a night.
Swift play of deathmatch. I'm not a very Swift play type of guy. I want to have my girlfriend. I don't need to find any girls in the Swift play. No, I don't like Swift play as much because I don't think I don't want to. Sometimes I play like a few tails in a DM. I can just leave after. So yeah, just for that, I would play the deathmatch over the Swift play.
Swift play because like deathmatch, you got people trying super hard, walking around, trying to like just win. You know, I'd rather go into Swift play and just run it down as chamber and just start piecing kids. But I'm really a fan of team deathmatch, I gotta say. So
I don't know. Is that like his deathmatch? Like I don't know. Like I mean I don't know. I could be a Swift play demon. Like I might have to start queuing up the Swift plays now.
Deathmatch. Deathmatch. Lol. Deathmatch.